If you've been exploring YouTube, you have seen video upon video about the Bryan Kohberger case upon hundreds, if not thousands, of different channels. Why is this such a big topic, and why are there still so many questions left unanswered on this episode of About the Law? So some people thought that it couldn't have been done, but here we are today with 5 more questions about the Kohberger case. I'm Lainey Law.
I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
And we are here with Doug Cope once again to ask you guys questions to make your little gears spin and to see the ins and outs of this case. And obviously, as always, be sure to tell us what you think about everything in the comments because you guys have been so awesome. Now, Andrew, how on earth can we possibly have 5 more points of the Kohberger case?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Doug, welcome. Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's just amazing. You can come up every single week with some other aspect of this case. This is the case that keeps on giving.
Well, Doug, there are hundreds. So to narrow it down to 5 every week, and I'll give you a little preview. One of them is a repeat from the previous one, but it is just so important that it deserves a closer look. But Doug, there's just so many points. And as you know, this case has been kept secret and sealed and sequestered and gagged. And now the media has been kicked out. That all of that is backfired because if you dig into YouTube, there are new podcasts, there are new media videos every single day. So the whole idea of sealing this case, I think, has more than backfired.
Yeah, I wonder if, honestly, if everything was out in the open, realistically, would this be as crazy of a situation as now? Because now that everything's, gagged and sealed, people are digging harder than ever versus, and, maybe more often than not coming along misinformation as a result of that because they're so desperate to find out more versus if everything were out in the open, maybe we wouldn't be where we are today.
Well, that's a natural inclination of people,
Well, hold on to that thought and ask me why we don't have more in the end. But let's get into our 5. The first one is, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, and people might get mad at me, but people are mad at me every day anyhow. So,
it's your job to have people mad at you, attorney Myers.
It's my life. So let's get right into it. Back on October 3rd, the Daily Mail had an article showing that Idaho murders victim roommate Dylan Mortensen, one of the survivors, is now isolating herself, but healing by gaming online with groups of friends. As her father says, he is deeply heartbroken by brutal cyber bullies. But first of all, Lainey, I'm going to tell a story out of school here. Let me read this again. Dylan Mortensen is isolating herself. She still has survivor's guilt, but she is healing by gaming online. And Lainey, I'm going to tell a story out of school and tell people that you know a lot about gaming. Is gaming a way to really heal from a stressful thing like this?
Well, I don't know how you would guess that I know a lot about gaming, whether it be the stack of games here, the stack of Pokemon stuffed animals, or the Nintendo Switch over there. But it's an interesting thought because, like you said, is isolating and gaming. It's ironic because even though you're playing online with friends, that's kind of a good way to put the experience of gaming where you're sitting alone in a room. And for me personally, I definitely game when I'm stressed out. However, it's usually counterproductive in the sense where when you're gaming, you're putting yourself in a different world. And now with gaming, a lot of people associate gaming as being competitive and being high intensity, potentially being violent. So you wouldn't necessarily think like, oh, this is going to be healing. How is this a healing experience? But
here we go.
We've got the stack.
What is all of that?
Wow.
This is not even a fraction of the collection. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but those of you who, you know, were gamers about 20 years ago may be familiar with some of these. Around 20 years ago, crazy to say. But so surprisingly in society nowadays, gaming has become like, you know, pretty equal between genders, 50-50. But a lot of the games that are associated with men tend to be like those high octane games. Yeah, exactly. Andrew's out here playing Call of Duty, shooting teenagers. That's a games he's not.
I don't know anything about it. My idea of a game is like word womp or you know, something like that. I mean, I don't. The other one I know. What is that?
My game. This is an original Pac-Man. Here we go.
Which maybe, you know, could be a relaxing game, maybe a little high octane. You're kind of getting chased around in Pac-Man, if I had to say. Yeah, so with the whole experience of gaming, for a lot of people, when you have high stress situations like that, how I said that it could be anti-healing. For example, there's certain games that, you know, some watchers may know this game and some people will have no idea what I'm talking about, but a game called League of Legends, where that's a social game and your team is basically telling you to go unalive the whole game and saying that you're horrible and your teammates are working against you and you're just struggling to have a good time. So I don't think anybody...
I always thought games were like really aggressive. You have to go into the cave and shoot every last one in there. Then you go up to the next level, and if you don't get them first, they get you. I mean, I don't know, but that was my idea. Was that it's very PTSD generating.
It can be stressful. Yeah.
Well, what about your thumbs? Don't they wear out? You know.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing. I mean, like, I guess something to compare. The experience of gaming and these two boxes from my beautiful stack of 20-year-old games can kind of illustrate that. You know, for those of you who may not understand, we have a game called Resident Evil and Harvest Moon. So a little bit of a different experience. Now, when you're playing games, one way or the other, you're playing with friends, I think it's good to obviously be talking to people and having that kind of social interaction. You know, gaming can be very isolating, but I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, she could be playing Animal Crossing and relaxing and having, because that's like a very slow paced game. This is not Animal Crossing, but like there are slow paced games where you kind of can relax and, you know, don't have to be doing something all the time and can kind of play them in the background. And maybe that serves as a good, you know, that's the thing is like, I still want to say distraction. I mean,
yeah, it's escapism, right?
Yeah, it's escapism. A lot of like, for example, both of these games to a degree, I mean, I think all games to a degree, they're called like RPGs, role-playing games. You're kind of putting yourself into like a different universe. So I don't know.
I had no idea we would go this deeply down this rabbit hole.
I could talk about games forever.
I just learned a very great deal. So I gather it's kind of like what Mr. Cope just told us, that it's rather than being a very aggressive thing like I envisioned, maybe that's reflection, I don't know. It's more kind of like an escape. It's something you do. Like I might go home at the end of the day and put my headphones on and listen to music. It's kind of like that. Okay, so let's get back to young Dylan. Where did she go? There she is. So you're saying, okay, maybe it's something that helps her to heal by escaping. So that was the statement that they made back on October 3rd, was that, you know, she was still suffering from survivor's guilt. Fast forward to November 26th, the Daily Mail had quite a spread with many more pictures than the ones we're showing here, where Dylan Mortensen is seen in costume, dancing and partying with friends. And, you know, there were other photos of her and her friends, you know, partying it up and having a good time. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all, you know, hope that she goes on with her life and does I'm at a loss for words, that she goes on with her life and that she's able to recover from this as much as possible. She probably will have PTSD for the rest of her life. But the problem I see here is that, you know, on the one hand, you know, she's isolating herself and having problems. And on the other hand, you know, just weeks later, she's partying it up. Now, and she's a star witness, by the way. She's a
Yeah.
star witness. If you go back to the probable cause affidavit, it is she and not the other survivor, Bethany Funk. It is she that gave the testimony about seeing a man clad in black, and he had bushy eyebrows, and he was so high, and he was built in a certain way. So she has to be a witness in a case like this. You've got to have a witness at the scene, and she's it. She's supplying material for cross-examination. Oh, so you had survivor's guilt. Oh, well, here are pictures of you partying. Is that survivor's guilt? So I'm just saying that there's cross-examination material. We're not even going to talk about the 8-hour delay. We're not even going to talk about the initial shock phase. But I see this as creating cross-examination fodder. Am I taking it too far, guys?
Well, I mean, she's partying. That's another form of escape, I guess.
Mhm.
Right. So
That's
she
kind
got
of what I
attention.
was thinking, yeah, because it's like, and one of the things that I forgot to mention with the gaming is that for,
Here we
you
go.
know, like yeah, back on gaming.
Here
No,
we
like
go.
for some people, you go home and, you know, you can listen to your music and read a book and escape for a little bit. But gaming can also manifest in like addiction too. So I don't, you know, we can't say anything about Dylan, but, you know, somebody who games some people who game who are predispositioned to like addiction, it can be a problem and consume their life. And, you know, going out and partying, you know, I don't know this person, maybe it was once and like we saw it's Halloween, so maybe it's like, you know, her first party back, I don't know. But that's like another thing too, where it's just like if you have addictive tendencies, gaming is appealing, partying and drinking is appealing. And when you're going through like a state of distress, you know, you're more prone to be susceptible to those things.
Yeah.
I hate to bring it down, but again, I do believe that there is a problem in cross-examination, and she is supplying ammunition for cross-examination. I mean, yes, go out and party and have a good time. People of all ages like to do that, but knowing that there's a camera there and knowing that there are media people out there that are going to spread it all over the place. All right, I have a lot more to say about that, but you know what?
Let's go to number 4.
Let's go to number 4.
There you go.
By popular request, we will now go to number 4. And this is the repeat, but I think it is really worth taking another look at that timeline, because previously we had all different times. We had the time of the neighbor's clock or the neighbor's camera catching certain things, and we had other things happening. These are the only 2 times that are really relevant. At 4:04 a.m. on November 13th of 2022, the suspect vehicle, the Hyundai Elantra that law enforcement believes that Mr. Kohberger was driving, made a 3-point turn at King Road and Queen Road. And this is in the probable cause affidavit on page 6, paragraph 2. Then only 16 minutes later at 4:20 a.m., that suspect vehicle number 1 departs the area of King Road residence at a high rate of speed. And that's in the probable cause affidavit, page 6, paragraph 3. Take a closer look at that. That's only 16 minutes between the 3-point turn and taking off at a high rate of speed. In 16 minutes, someone parked the car, got out of the car, went into the property, committed the crimes, the 4 murders, and then somehow cleaned up to the extent that they got to the car, leaving no blood anywhere, no footprints anywhere, no nothing. 16 minutes. Really? Do you guys believe that?
Well, yeah, as you said, we've discussed this before, and it is highly questionable. And of course, one of the victims was stabbed, what was it, 53 times?
Yeah,
Something
54, yeah.
along those lines. So, yeah, it is kind of questionable that to do all of that would require more time than 16 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth bringing up again, you know,
Now,
and worth saying, hey, is this actually possible?
Now, there are people out there that say this is not the accurate timeline, that if you look at all of the cameras, not just the law enforcement cameras, if you look at all of the cameras in Moscow, Idaho, there were other Hyundai Elantras of the proper model, not the model that Mr. Kohberger had, but of the correct model that the law enforcement originally saw at different times. So it is possible. Many people suggest that this timeline is going to change between now, or the date of the probable cause affidavit, December 2022, and the time of the trial. But that's a problem because you have a police officer signing the probable cause affidavit, as you sign all affidavits under the pains and penalties of perjury. So now they're going to bring that officer in, who, by the way, was one of the many investigative officers, and they're going to cross-examine him. And so this timeline is a problem in more ways than one. And as you would say, Mr. Cope, it's a gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, yes, it is.
I can't believe this. I don't know. Like, when you say it's like 16 minutes, it's just like I cannot even wake up and like go anywhere in 16 minutes. Obviously, you know, you in a situation like that, you're a little bit more calculated. But the span of 16 minutes, I don't know who's accomplishing anything in that. It's like you can't even make breakfast in 16 minutes a lot of the time. My toaster takes like 7. Like, it's crazy.
This is nuts. Okay, let's go.
You need a new toaster.
It's a toaster oven.
that could be a Christmas present.
Everybody got to become members on our YouTube channel to help support the toaster fund.
So now we go to the next one, and this too is a little bit of a repeat, but not really. The media was kicked out on the defendant Bryan Kohberger's motion to remove cameras. And on November 17th of 2023, the court stated that it is the intense focus on Kohberger and his every move, along with adverse headlines and news articles, that leads this court to conclude that continued photographing and video coverage inside the courtroom by the media should no longer be permitted. And so they kicked him out, and they're going to do it on the judge's YouTube page. And here it is. I checked it out.
That is insane to me. You know, it's a very dystopian society where we live in, where it's like every professional has like a YouTube channel, right? No, like in our case, where we're like discussing law things, it's interesting, but it's like crazy to like put, like, I can't imagine like a police officer having a YouTube channel, but maybe they'd pop off. I don't know. Little strange.
Judge? Oh, come on.
Yeah. That's Judge John Judge. Yeah. Now, I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube, so I did not copy their page of his. This is a likeness of the page. This is a likeness of the page, and you'll notice that the little subscribe button isn't the same. So, but what is accurate is that that's his YouTube page, and as of today, the day we're recording this, he had 5,240 odd subscribers.
Yeah.
So
Slay.
there it is.
It's crazy.
I can only imagine that between today and the day the case is actually tried, that number will go way, way, way up. But there it is. Lainey,
it's... Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just going to ask you, it would seem to me that with the trial being on YouTube, and you know a lot more about YouTube than I do, although I'm learning really quickly, YouTube has really very restrictive rules about what you can and you can't do with their material. Once you post something on YouTube, they own it. They have the copyright. And I was looking at their rules yesterday. I'm questioning, whether Court TV, News, Not Nation, ABC, CBS, all those people, are they going to be able to grab the live stream and put it on the air? Are they going to be able to take little clips and put them on the evening news? Just how much can the legacy media use these clips out of YouTube? Do you know?
Yeah. And that's like, awesome for you, Judge, for your 5,000 subscribers. Like, we, through blood, sweat, and tears, hit 2,000. Thank you, everybody watching. We appreciate you. But that being said, the fact that if it's published on Judge John Judge's actual YouTube channel, then that to me is a little bit of a red flag in that case, versus if it were like if Idaho like court systems had like their own YouTube channel where it was kind of more of a state controlled thing. But even then with YouTube and what can be used and what can't be used, there's a lot of debate on that and what's considered free use and what, you know, is acceptable or not. So for a lot of different services, like Court TV and stuff like that, or you know, any news official news organizations, a lot of the time when you see like TikToks and stuff on TV, they've usually been licensed. Usually, you know, they have to get a license, like, you know, permission to license it, and usually a lot of people pay for stuff like that. But with YouTube, like we see in like on every channel pretty much, a lot of the times people will play clips and comment on those clips. So like theoretically, like there have been like free use cases where, you know, people have won because they were reacting to a video and it's not taking away from people actually going to see the original video, which is, you know, has been established precedent on YouTube. That being said, YouTube also has its own copyright system where like you'll see with music or movies and things like that, even though you can still find some in some are official movies and stuff. A lot of the times if you try to re-upload content, especially on a channel that's monetized, you might see something that comes up like, oh, this content has been claimed. And sometimes channels can claim content, or organizations can claim content, but it doesn't actually impact the YouTube channel itself. When they claim a video, they can choose to not do anything. They're just basically saying, hey, this is my content, this channel's fine to use it. They can claim the video and take the monetization away. In that case, like any money that the video would have generated is now going to the original copyright holder, but they're not still taking action on taking it off the channel. Beyond that, you know, the copyright holder can restrict the content in certain countries. So maybe, you know, it might not be available in some countries, but then they can also fully, you know, take the content off YouTube, or they can also issue like straight up copyright strikes where because you're stealing content and re-uploading content, they can put a penalty on your channel. And then that's when it becomes like a legal case and you can do a counter claim, you know, and then that actually becomes the legal process starting right there. And I'm not legal professional despite my namesake, but all that being said, yeah, it's going to be up to, if it's on judge's channel, it's up to him whether he's going to have that automatic copyright detection, whether he's going to automatically strike anything that uses it. Are they going to have to license it? Are you going to have to ask for permission? So that's on a very creator by creator basis, because, you know, some people are fine with everybody using their stuff, and YouTube has options where you can mark it as like Creative Commons that anybody can use it. So that there's a lot of different possibilities with things like that.
So that's an open question. I think we have to stand corrected. I think in the Laurie Daybell case, which also took place in Idaho, I think it was the state's YouTube channel. So it's so it's going to be the state's YouTube channel, I would guess. So I stand corrected on that one. But everything you just said would still apply in terms of whether the copyright protection applies or doesn't apply. And someone, and I'm going to guess it's the judge, so it's the same, really. Someone is going to have to make all those decisions you were just talking about. Someone is going to have to make the decision whether, you know, suppose Court TV or some other, I don't mean to pick on them, suppose one of the legacy media outlets decides to start streaming it from the state of Idaho's YouTube channel. Someone's going to have to make the decision, and there we are with Judge again.
Well, I thought the whole point was to not bring media into the courtroom,
right?
You know, but not restrict, you know, the video from the courtroom. I mean, I thought I seem to recall that when the judge made that decision, he said that media outlets could take segments from their YouTube channel to use in their reporting about the case. So even though now this is on a judge's channel and not on a channel of the county court system, correct?
Well, that
We don't know
like I said,
yet.
I might stand corrected on that, and that'll be one of our 5 points in the next video. That'll be
And the reason I say this now, even locally, even
Yeah.
in my town,
Yeah.
there is a town YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And on that channel, you can watch live
Yeah.
select board meetings and various other meetings that do have cameras in them.
Right.
And I know that local media outlets also take segments of those YouTube videos and use them on their air. I'm talking about a local radio station, uses it on their air in covering that particular meeting or event.
Well, don't you think there's going to be a big difference though between a locality, and their local zoning board meetings and that type thing, and a judge who really is a judge who is really very angry, and I think his anger came out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was angry that he had given the media 3 directives. We don't want this to start until the until the hearing actually starts. We don't want any close-ups on the defendant himself, and we're really worried about showing papers of the attorneys, and at least 2 of those were violated. So don't you think there's a difference between the local town allowing the local Christmas tree being put up to be used by people and the judge being angry at these people? Really? Really?
Not at all.
I do.
It's either access or it's not. It's either,
I don't know. On YouTube,
it's either a government channel or it's not.
Yeah.
We stand for that government channel. You and
me.
Well,
I agree with you there. We agree on that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The thing is, on YouTube, though, I agree with Doug where it's just like they should have a standard rule. You can either use the footage on this channel or you can't, or it should be like very clearly stated in their content. Like I mentioned with fair use, if you use it like a clip and you add commentary, if you can't argue that people wouldn't watch the original, then as that's supposed to be a-okay. But at the end of the day, the YouTube channel itself can also choose who it wants to strike. So it can also choose like, oh, this person used it, we're gonna let them go get a pass, but then somebody used it in a way they didn't like, and they can strike that. But it should also be made very clear too.
Well, a public meeting and a public trial being public are one of the same. The judges.
Well, I agree with you, but this judge is not happy. And
he wasn't happy because of close-ups and all those other things you're talking about. He's now eliminated that because they're going to have one fixed camera at the back of the courtroom.
But we don't know that.
Well, that's the likely scenario.
Yeah, in the Daybell case, there were a couple because you would see the camera pointing down at at Daybell and her attorneys, and then you would see a shot of the judge. So they had at least 2 cameras. They might have had more.
The court can control the content, whereas before the court did not feel they were in control of the content. So as long as they control the content of a public trial, that should be available to the public to use as they wish.
I agree with it. It should be, but these people are not happy. They're not happy campers. And I think that they might actually take some steps to restrict what the media is allowed to do with it, because that was one of the things that the judge did, in fact, say in his, which I thought was overboard, but the judge in his decision kicking the cameras out said that he was very unhappy, not so much with the cameramen or women who were in the courtroom, but what was done with that later, not only the editors of the various media, but you horrible podcasters out there. So
horrible podcasters.
Well, that could be a problem.
How he is going to control, but that has nothing to do with podcasting. I mean, podcasting is a relatively recent thing. Human behavior is human behavior. I mean, you go all the way back to William Randolph Hearst's days, and in those days, one of my favorite quotes, which is on my Facebook page, is, "You give me the pictures and I'll give you the war." I mean, these newspaper editors for years and years and years have doing everything they can to gin up the headlines to sell papers. I mean, look at the Daily Mirror, look at the New York Post, look at, I could go on and on. So it has nothing really to do with podcasters, although they are the ones that are the most popular currently. But, people have ginned up the news for years and years and years. That's nothing new. But all right, let's go on to the next one. Number two. Yes. And number 2 is going to be, there's just so much secrecy. This, I don't think we can argue about. There have just been so many things that have been made private in this case. there have now been 10 discovery requests by the defense. And what that means, there might still be a few people that don't know what that means, but when you're in litigation, the parties are allowed to ask questions on paper and to request documents and things. And the defense has now asked for 10 different cycles of requests. And they've all been sealed. Every single request has been sealed. They file this. They say, here's our face sheet, and here's our request. We're requesting all the items that are on Exhibit A. Exhibit A is sealed. So the 10th discovery request was made, and it was sealed. But interestingly, they cited not only the constitutional requirement that the prosecution, I should say, give them everything, but they went further and they cited the Idaho Rule of Criminal Procedure, and they cited Rule 16B 1 through 8, and they didn't go beyond it to 9, which is interesting. But anyhow, here are the rules in Idaho. Disclosure of evidence and materials by the prosecution on written request. Remember, this is number 10. Except as otherwise provided in this rule, the prosecuting attorney must, not may or can or might think about it, the prosecuting attorney must at any time following the filing of charges on written request by the defendant disclose the following information, evidence, and material to the defendant. Any statements by the defendant. 2, statement of a co-defendant. Isn't that interesting? Do you remember way back in the beginning when Mr. Kohberger was first arrested, one of his first statements before he was told to shut up was, did they arrest anyone else? Remember that? Okay. 3, defendant's prior record. That's standard stuff. 4, documents and tangible objects. This is all standard stuff. Books, papers, documents, photographs, tangible objects, buildings or places. 5, reports of examinations and tests. 6, state witnesses. 7, expert witnesses, and that would be the DNA stuff, which we've already gone over. That's already been the subject of a previous request. So what are the expert witnesses and examinations and tests that they're looking for now? And then finally, police reports. Well, now, okay, here's the state did provide certain discovery, and they immediately filed a motion to temporarily seal the Exhibit 1 of the state's responses to the defendant's 10th supplemental request for discovery. And you might say this is perfunctory, and this came out after the major order to kick the media out of the courtroom. So I think that this kind of got lost in the shuffle. I found this interesting, though. These are the grounds on which the state, now responding to the discovery request, says it should be sealed. State of Idaho, by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, respectfully moves this court pursuant to Idaho Court Administrative Rule XYZ for a temporary order sealing Exhibit 1, which is the stuff that they're producing. We want it all sealed because the release or disclosure would, 1, interfere with enforcement proceedings. We turn the page, and here's the meat of this state's motion to seal everything. It could, 2, deprive a person of a right to a fair trial or an impartial adjudication. 3, 2, look, there's 2 twos. Constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. 3, disclose the identity of confidential sources, and or 4, disclose investigative techniques and procedures. So wherefore the state respectfully prays that the court seal from public disclosure Exhibit 1, which is everything that they are producing. So what's interesting about this is that, you know, they're still saying everything has to be kept bottled up. Everything has to be kept private. We're going to produce it. We're going to let the defendant see it, but we're not going to let anybody else see it. And defendant, you mayn't show anyone. So it's just, you know, this continuing volleyball of keeping everything private until the time of trial. So, you know, it concerns me that so much of it has been kept private. And so finally, finally, we get down to the number one. You guys want to know what number one is? You're going to guess?
Number one.
Dun dun dun.
A police report. We've never seen the
Oh.
police report in this case. We've never heard the 911 call. We haven't heard the 911 call either by audio or by a transcript. And
Why?
because of what I just the 6 reasons, 2 of them being number 2 that I just showed you. They, just don't want it to be public. That's all.
But why is that? What could be in those reports that what could be in that report and that call that we shouldn't be hearing?
Well, it's
Or
only
seeing?
it's only speculation because none of us have seen it, but remember that there was an 8-hour delay between the time of the murders and the time at 11:58 that morning that law
Oh.
enforcement was called. So what happened in those 8 hours? There is speculation that the police were not the first parties that were called from that home. And so who was called? Why were they called? What did they do? Did they contaminate the crime scene? A number of police officers showed up before the scene was sealed. That I believe, know as a fact. Why is the police report not being unveiled? In the probable cause affidavit, you might remember that the officer who did the probable cause affidavit said that he got there at 4:00 in the afternoon. So what happened in the 4 hours roughly between 11:58 and 4:00 when he got there? So that's a big question that you
That's
ask, Mr.
crazy.
Cope.
Yes. Yes.
That's a big question that
Well,
you
I can
ask.
see why it's number one.
Yeah, like actually when you think about it, I mean, even the things like the 911 call, like I don't know, it's a lot of mystery, a lot of confusion. Who did it come from? How did the cops get there? Like you mentioned, were other people there? Were they contaminating? It's a lot of mystery. It's a lot up there.
Yeah, usually in any case, really, we would have seen a police report made public. There could
Mhm.
be some redactions on it, but it is unusual that no police report has been made public as yet.
Yeah, in my work, I generally get a police report. Now, sometimes they're a little bit resistive. Sometimes
Yeah.
it has to be reviewed by higher authorities. And as you say, Doug, it's sometimes heavily redacted.
Heavily.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can understand them redacting phone numbers and addresses and that kind of thing, but they do get heavily redacted. But get out the dun 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 sound effect, because I don't know if you're aware of some of the things that are out there, and a lot of it is speculation. But there are pieces of video out there that cite people who can be confirmed by multiple sources that say that people around Moscow, Idaho, knew about the fact that a crime had occurred at 1122 King Road at 10 o'clock in the morning, not at 11:58 when the police were called, but
Yeah.
there are people that have said that there are students who knew at 10 o'clock in the morning that people do these groups, the Snapchat groups. And there was a Snapchat group in which a number of students were issuing dozens of messages that there were stabbings at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. That there was speculation that maybe there was an overdose. Quote, we knew there were drugs in that house, unquote. Again, these are all unsubstantiated allegations, but people have actually been quoted, and then that was verified by independent sources. And there are questions about, why it was that neither Dylan nor Bethany Funk, the 2 survivors, were the ones that called 911.
And
Someone,
it's interesting that you mentioned the Snapchat specifically. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but Snapchat's one of the few platforms. It's not like texting where you get to save the message. Snapchat, it disappears after too.
Right.
right. There's no way for even forensic people to find that stuff.
You can save messages in Snapchat. If as far as forensic people, I'm not sure because I imagine that Snapchat has some kind of cloud data saving, but I know like the average person, if you open a Snapchat, if you go to check that Snapchat afterwards, you have maybe like one opportunity to replay it, and then after you replay it, it's gone forever. So like there's a chat function where you can save messages, and it'll show you who saved it exactly, and it'll show like everything like that. So or if you screenshot an image, Snapchat will alert the person that you screenshotted the image as well, because it's supposed to be like temporary.
Now, just generally speaking, there are in fact legitimate reasons to redact things and to keep things sequestered and sealed and private. I mean, the first number one thing is we want a fair trial. That's beyond any questioning at all. You've got to ensure that the defendant will get a fair trial. And one of the other reasons to keep things private is that you do want to protect the investigation, to make sure that police who are still investigating something are able to protect the investigation. But I would suggest, and you two have pointed out that you'll let me know if I'm wrong. I would suggest that the secrecy over this case has far exceeded anything that's reasonable. I mean, why is it that it wasn't Dylan or Bethany that called 911? Who was it that called? Why were they there? What happened in those 8 hours? So I would suggest that the secrecy in this case has far exceeded that which is necessary to preserve the goal of A, making sure there's a fair trial, and B, not tainting the jury pool, which are the two reasons which I would say are absolutely valid in terms of keeping things under wraps to some extent. Do you guys agree?
All the more reason to do more podcasts, because this is the case that keeps on giving. Because
Honestly, yeah.
because
Something
of
that
all the secrecy, everybody wants to delve into it more than ever.
And like how you bring up the point of somebody else potentially calling 911. What I thought was interesting, like this just like came to my mind, but obviously there was like like some rough housing heard at night, allegedly, like as they said. But I know people were saying that blood was dripping out. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I'm curious as to, because if the door is of a teenager, young adult is closed at noon, usually nobody goes knocking suspecting anything, because people do sleep in. So it's interesting to think about like how they even found the bodies in the first place, or found out that something had happened. It's like, if I'm sleeping till noon, I mean, I think if anybody sleeps till noon, it's not really that surprising, unless you have plans.
Then how do you explain the multiple, and it's speculation? I'll admit to that, but we aren't being given a lot of facts. And so when speculation is supported by verifying people's names and addresses and other corroboration, and there were people talking in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th of 2022 that something had happened in that house, and people were talking and Snapchatting at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours, or I'll be more accurate, an hour and 58 minutes before the police were called. I don't buy that people were sleeping all morning. No.
But like, so not the survivors, but the victims is more what I'm thinking. I guess for people it makes for a very quiet house, but like you said, if it's happening at 10 a.m., is it really that strange for college students to not come out of their room at 10 a.m.? So I think there's a lot of mysteries. Like how did they know that the murders had occurred? Why were you going into their rooms unless we don't know what the scene looked like at the time? Maybe there was blood pouring out of the rooms, but it's really weird to me. And maybe the house, everybody wakes up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday and everything's hunky-dory, and they had a dog, so maybe they had to let the dog out and stuff like that. So there's different elements to it, but it is also weird to me that, especially since if people found out at 10 o'clock, how did the people in the house know at 10 o'clock? And maybe it was just an abnormally quiet day and they decided to check. I don't know, but it leaves for more room for speculation.
I don't know. Another point that I want to make is that I'm very disappointed that there's not more active media in that area. I actually invited somebody from one of the local newspapers out there to come on our podcast, and they didn't want to come. But why aren't journalists asking more questions. And by analogy, there was a podcaster, not a media person, but before the Alexander Murdoch trial in the early months of 2023, there was a podcaster who did an incredible job investigating the boat crash and the housekeepers slip and fall down the stairs. His name was Eric Allen, and he did these incredible podcasts before the trial about all the circumstances of, Alexander Murdoch, and he was asking a lot of questions about what really happened at the Murdoch estate that night of the murder. And he did an awful lot of investigation, and some of his podcasts, I've never met the man, I'm not getting anything for saying this, but some of his podcasts were much better quality in terms of the substance of the material than I've seen on some of the legacy media. And the reason I bring it up is, why isn't there someone doing that out in Idaho? I mean, podcasters like us, we're 3,000 miles away here on the East Coast, so we're obviously restricted from what we can do. And there's a ton
the podcaster obviously has a lot of time. And as you know, conventional media now has been really stripped to bare bones. And sure, you'll be able to cover this story when it goes to trial, but before that, you got to cover the lighting of the town Christmas tree, and you got to cover the 2-car accident down on Main Street. And even if I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day on how there are many papers that do not have any reporters at all. So it's a sign of the time.
So is that what the court wants here? We don't even have a trial date, and some people are saying it might go into 2025. So is that what the court wants, is for all of us to just speculate based on, what we think might be true? I mean, we try to corroborate things, but
they can't stop it. So,
I go back to that statement that was made by that author who, talked about the reporters going into the press conference with their tripods over their shoulders as though they were marching to war. That's not the exact quote, but it just showed the hostility towards the media. And the judge, in my view, my interpretation of the order kicking the cameras out, was that he was angry. And that anger spilled over into that motion, because the order kicking the cameras out quoted some law that has nothing to do with any valid concern. Remember, Doug, we were talking about how one of the basic cases the court was talking about went back to 1965, when TV cameras were the size of a boathouse.
Right.
So,
all I can say is, Judge, you have made your bed, and now you will lie in it. So,
well, I wouldn't. The other thing that where I was going with that about just the people in Idaho not appreciating the media, I guess I'll put it that way, is that I just watched the Alexander Murdoch sentencing. It just happened to have happened the day before we're recording this podcast. He had finally pled guilty to some of those financial crimes, and so they waited a week until they could bring him back. And he was sentenced, and a lot of the financial crime victims were in the court. And one of the attorneys representing the victims, when Murdoch had a chance to stand up, that guy, the attorney representing the victims, got up and walked out. Didn't want to hear any of it. But the thing that struck me was, after the sentencing, and now they're pretty much done with that whole episode, Creighton Waters was, giving a victory lap, thanking everybody, as well he should. He did an excellent job. One of the victims' attorneys came out and said, I want to thank the news media for their role. I want to thank the media. I want to thank the media for everything that they've done in this case. They've cooperated, and he went out of his way to cooperate with, to thank the media for their work. So why is there such a disparity between South Carolina, where the attorneys generally felt that the media was doing a good job, in Idaho, which just is, get out of here. It just really struck me that there's that attitude in Idaho. And I'm shocked that there aren't some local enterprising podcasters or up and coming media people that aren't digging into this case more. It shocks me. It really does.
It's Idaho, and not that many big cities, not that many places to attract, young talent or experienced talent. So I don't know. Maybe it's not that surprising.
We disagree. I'm shocked.
Well, with the state of the media today, not that shocked.
Why do you say that? I go
just,
home and I want to.
No, just because of all the cutbacks and the rise of social media as being the main form of journalism.
Yeah.
Conventional radio and television viewership and listenership is less and less every year. People aren't going into the business because a lot of the jobs either aren't there or don't pay. So, I'm not really surprised at all. The general level of journalism has been reduced quite a bit. I mean, even in this town that I live in, there's no local paper anymore. There's no weekly paper anymore. There used to be for years and years and years. It's gone. If you want to know what's going on in my town, you got to watch those YouTube videos on the town channel to watch the various meetings, or else you'll have no clue. So,
yeah.
It's
too bad. It's too bad. Yeah, and the Sunday papers, we've talked about this before. The Sunday papers that used to be like this and took you all morning to read. Now they're like that, and you read them while your coffee's still warm.
Right. Well, a lot of that, of course, was advertising, and over the years, advertising in a newspaper is virtually gone. Everything's on, on a website.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I do definitely think that, as sad as it is, I think, like you said, is just like the money's not being put into acquiring new talent. It's getting more expensive to live. And when we see things like YouTube and social media, I think that usually the people making videos have a little bit more going on in life. So when they're making a video, they care more about it and they get to put more into it. Versus if you're working on a news story, you only have a limited time that you can put into something. And also it has to share the spotlight with whatever other stories are going on. So I definitely see that.
Well, one of the problems with all of that is that for good or for bad, the newspapers and the TV stations and the radio stations were monitored and produced and put together by some kind of editorial control, whether it was good or bad. Usually the big cities would have at least a couple of newspapers. Boy, I'm dating myself now, but so one would be on the right, one would be on the left, but that's not the type of editorial control I'm talking about. The editorial control I'm talking about is, we've got to cover this story. Let's get a reporter over there. Let's get a reporter over there. Let's go take another look at that meat inspector that was caught throwing meat in the back of his car from the place that he just gave a food license to. There was some control. There was someone that had, I don't want to say a graduate level degree, but because that's not a great thing to say, but that there was someone that was exercising some thought into what was going to be presented as the news that day. Now, if we're relying on newspapers where, kids just, do whatever they want. I saw a podcast yesterday, a couple of days ago. I saw a podcast on this topic, and the podcaster is actually somebody I like, but the podcaster said, "You show me why Bryan Kohberger is not guilty. You can't prove to me that he was not guilty. You can't prove to me who did the crime." And that's just not the standard. The standard is that, the prosecution has the burden of proof to prove that, beyond all reasonable doubt, that sufficient evidence exists to show that this person is guilty. But this podcaster was going on and on and on about how you can't prove to me that he is innocent. And that's the wrong question. I've said all along, I don't know if you two will agree with me, but I've said all along in my podcasts on this subject that I respect that presumption of innocence. I'm not saying Bryan Kohberger is innocent, and I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm saying he's entitled to that presumption of innocence until the very end.
But you did watch that podcast.
Yeah.
It's got to stay educated on all sides.
Case closed.
What?
Case closed.
So yeah, the podcaster clearly knows. Everything a podcaster says is 100% right 100% of the time. You should know that based on our channel, Andrew. Based on the comments too. Yeah.
in doing this podcast, I like to do a lot of research. And Doug,
Yes,
as you
do.
pointed out, there's nothing in the news media about this case.
No,
so you've got to go on to Google News, and you've got to
you
go
know,
on.
I have to. This is an opinion. You often talk about watching court TV. I've just been watching it actually for I mean, I've watched it before, but I have been watching it the last couple of days. Opinion, they're not that good.
They put out a lot of content too, so that's like regular news. Yeah.
You know, in terms of really getting into a subject, researching, it's, you know, I know it's television and I know they're trying to keep you watching, but it's usually a couple of talking heads. If it's not, you know, in courtroom video live that's being shown, it's a couple of talking heads. And quite often, those talking heads don't have much to add, quite frankly.
Well, that was my criticism. I said I made the point when they came out with the documentary somewhat recently called The Case Against Bryan Kohberger. And I said that I like court TV. I will defend them. I think Vinnie Politano is great. I think he does a fantastic job. He has a background as a prosecutor, and I enjoy their programs. But I'll agree with you that sometimes it's a little bit one-sided. Sometimes it's a little bit biased. Sometimes, you know, and that particular show was one that I thought was very one-sided, and they should have been more open-minded about, you know, hey, let's respect the fact that the guy has not been found guilty, so he's entitled to the presumption of innocence.
Well, you know, it just looks like, just like every other media outlet, they're feeding the beast.
Well,
and, you know,
by that you mean that. By that, I think you mean that the media is now 24/7, 365. They've got to fill the time. I don't know anything about the economics of court TV, but I can imagine that, as with any media, you know, the budget is limited, and so you know, you do what you can. I've actually, with some exceptions, like the one I just told you, I generally like court TV more because they show you live stuff that you can't see anywhere else.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's fine for what it is. You know, it's fine for what it is. But I don't know. Don't expect too much.
A lot of times it puts me to sleep. I mean, I am an attorney, and I am an attorney, and I spend all day in my office here, and I work on my files, and I talk to my clients who I love, and I talk to, you know, other attorneys, and I deal with the courts and the judges. And, you know, so when I go home at the end of the day, I don't necessarily want to watch a lot of legal stuff. I really don't. I do it for this, but it's just, you know, so a lot of court TV does put me to sleep, even though I defend them. It's a medium that wasn't there a long time ago, and it's there now, and they have competition too. So
that's true.
All right, Lainey, any closing thoughts?
I mean, you know, I'm laughing, but it's like, this case does have a lot of twists and turns, and it, you know, like we said, everybody is innocent until proven guilty, and at the end of the day, like, a lot of this information is hidden, so we don't know a lot. So we appreciate everybody who spends their time watching us and, you know, diving deeper with us. And I know that this isn't going to be the first video you guys watch, and it's not going to be the last video you guys watch on this case, and we're excited, you know, as long as we keep getting your feedback. It seems like you guys are really enjoying this, and I like to see, even when you guys don't agree with us, you guys really got me on the hook with a lot of this stuff. So I do appreciate everybody who made it up to this point. Once again, thank you everybody who came from Harsh Realities channel. We love you guys, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.
Doug, good to see you again. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Everyone, please like, subscribe. Have a good day. You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions.